is on telepathy, and because mindsight does lead to telepathy, or rather, if you ask my daughter, she'll say that mindsight is telepathy.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like there's not a separation with the consciousness abilities.
Hmm.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
once you get really deep into mindsight, it's indistinguishable from telepathy. You can't even tell the difference.
Mm,
And
wow.
but it's like it's like our definition of telepathy might be different. And so my daughter, what she says telepathy is basically just getting information outside of yourself. So it's not necessarily getting it from another person. So when she gets information, sometimes it's from spiritual teachers, like or angels or guides. She also gets it from other entities in a room. She calls them eavesdroppers. So it could be a being that has a body or a being that doesn't have a body. And maybe it's someone that knows how to bilocate. Like she considers herself an eavesdropper. And then she also gets information from the field around us. And so that's why she says all of that's telepathy. And mindsight is a form of getting information in the field, basically. I so this whole time I had Levia with me. She was demonstrating like telepathy, the kind that people were mind blown by. And then I had Sean with me, who's a blind man with no eyes at all. And he was demonstrating clear vision. He was demonstrating where you can hold shapes in front of him and he can tell you exactly. Well, it doesn't even have to be in front of him, actually. I can hold him in front of me sometimes or hold him in another room. We could even write a word, put it in another room, and Sean would be able to read it. So at that stage, that's when it starts going into telepathy territory. But other people, it's all the same thing, but people will call it mindsight. Some people call it remote viewing. To
Yes.
me, it's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah. But what confuses me is if you're seeing Sean, you said he's seeing the object, but it could be in a different room. So yeah, you call that remote viewing, or he's getting the information from the field, but he's seeing it as if it is, like as if you would see it with your eyes, right? And then you say, Lidu, your daughter, who has this extreme ability with telepathy and seeing spirits or perceiving spirits. What is,
Both, both. She can see them and she can perceive them. It's like when you're very, very telepathic, it's just you get an instant knowledge of everything. In images, sometimes it's just in a knowing, or with her, it's like everything. Um, and she's really good at it. If she's really efficient at it. But her message is very strong that we all can do this. We all can tap into it. In fact, she always says that we are using telepathy all the time. It's just that we're not consciously aware of it. And so all she's doing is helping people to become more consciously aware of how to use the telepathy that they already are doing. It's like we're not putting our awareness on the telepathy that's happening already between us. I often will have two things in my hand. I'll have one shape here and one shape here. But as soon as I say, what shape is this? It doesn't matter where it is. I could put it in front of me. It doesn't matter. As soon as I say that, there's something about his consciousness that knows which one to focus on. And what makes it even weirder is even if I'm in another room and I shine a light on it, it's even easier for him to see. It becomes like super clear to him. And so there's something where it goes beyond just our senses into something else. And with my daughter, I usually demonstrate this, but one of the things we demonstrate so people can kind of model her telepathy is, I'll have somebody choose an image and they'll choose any kind of random image. And then I'll have her describe the image. So I won't ask her. I'll just say, go ahead, Levia, go ahead and describe it. And then she'll describe it. And it'll usually be in a way that I probably wouldn't have described. um, and sometimes this is the interesting part. Sometimes she'll describe things that are not in the picture, and you have to kind of look it up to see that those things were there. So I'm trying to think of an example. Well, this is one example. Um, she was looking at an image of a bunch of pumpkins in some kind of I can't remember what it's called, a little they were all in this thing. And so I said, what is this image of? This was actually for a documentary. And she says, well, it's a bunch of pumpkins. And she specified that it was at a pumpkin patch. But I remember thinking, you can't really tell it's a pumpkin patch from the picture. But then when we looked it up after, she was right. It was a pumpkin patch.
When you were talking about Sean again with the light, and I can't remember if it was Lidu or Sean that was describing the way you thought would think. It's almost like the consciousness is going into the consciousness of the, I mean, I can't really use words, but if it's all that oneness, it seems to be, or the oneness of the field, if we're all the oneness of the field, to be able to get information, we can go to the body, to the individualized body person, however you want to say. That's what it's from just listening to you. It sounds like that's what's happening, people that have this capacity. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, she can just see through my eyes. Well, with Lidu specifically, it's like when you become that telepathic with someone, it's like you both share the same experience, all of it. And so when I like, for example, this podcast right now, after this, I can go upstairs where Lidu is, and I can say, "Hey, Lidu, what was your favorite part?" And then she'll tell me something that
True.
happened that I'm not consciously thinking of. And she can just say it's because she's experiencing it as if she were here. And
Wow.
it's the same with my old memories. She can remember stuff that even I'm not remembering, or things that I totally forgot. She'll have details of it. And a lot of people get worried about, oh, is it okay that your daughter has access to all your thoughts? And I said it's totally fine. Like it's like she's always has had it. And for me, it's like she's explained this herself. She says, if you even have a thought that you think is negative, to her, it's not negative because she's seeing the big picture. She's seeing what orchestrated that negative thought from the beginning. And so she has nothing but compassion whenever she's seeing what I'm experiencing or experiencing what I'm experiencing.
Aw. Is that just with her mummy, or is that with, other people?
Yeah, she can do it with anybody that's wanting it. So she also knows when a person doesn't want to be read, and so she won't read those people.
Wow.
And that's also it's because telepathically there's this thing that says no, 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 and so she won't do it. She
Wow.
also, and that's her and the others too. And she also sees colors around the people who don't want it, and sees certain colors around the people who do want it. So there's just a lot going on there.
Amazing. Does Lidu get involved also with all of the extra mind over matter consciousness experiments that you guys do as well?
Yeah, we play around with it every once in a while. I'll let her come and try it. So when we were sticking things to the wall, before we do, I actually I had this technique where I would think, okay, how many times? My question to myself is, how many times out of 100 can I stick this thing to the wall? So that was my technique.
How
And so
many
most of
times
the
out of
time,
100? So you do it
yeah.
a
And
hundred
so
times.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, so at a few of those times something's going to stick, right? And so that was my
Yeah.
technique. So most of the time it fell. And then Lilu comes over, and then she just puts something on the wall, and she just does this thing, and then it stays. And I said, oh my gosh, she did it on the first try. And then after seeing that, then I started to be able to do it. So I was able to model her. And so she actually, this modeling thing is a really, really big because it's how children learn. And that's how I incorporate how I teach. The first thing before kids go to school, well, let's just talk about Western schooling. Typically what they do is they'll introduce a concept first, like logically, and then they'll tell the kids why they should learn it. And it's very boring usually, but they'll introduce it first. But the way kids learn before they go to school is they'll see things. And so they're already downloading and expecting to be able to do it. And then they experience, or they might just experience it first, and then they'll go to the parents afterwards and say, hey, I experienced this. Or for example, if they found a fruit on the ground, they'll like, hey, mommy, look what I found. And then the parent will say, well, that's what this is. They'll explain it after. So everything comes afterwards. It's not beforehand. And so one of the things that Lilu says about teaching and how she teaches is she does a lot telepathically. So she'll show you something. And then also, when we see something, it's like, okay, I expect to be able to do this. If you see 40 people put something on the wall, like let's say you see 40 people put a chair on the wall, you're going to expect to be able to do it just by watching. You kind of have the expectation, and expectation is so much stronger than belief. It's just,
Mm.
it happens because you expect
Expectation is
it.
stronger than belief.
Yeah,
Wow.
overrides
I
belief.
have to sit with that one.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things she just kind of shows you. The other thing she has said is to teach, it is much better, especially with telepathy. It's so much better to just open up channels telepathically and to teach telepathically. And so she says the first thing you want to do is you want to ask your teachers to help you and let them know that you want your channels to be open more. And and the reason you do that is because they won't intervene, and she won't either. Nobody will intervene unless you ask them to. And so, as soon as someone says they want their telepathic channels open, they want to be taught, so Lily will do her thing. She'll start teaching her and the spiritual friends. They'll start helping open the channels. And then also, their brains will kind of get on the same wavelength as hers. And so that's another thing that helps to open it. So just by being in someone's presence who's very, very gifted at telepathy, your telepathy starts to grow, as long as you're open to it. And so one of the things Lilu said that was really, really profound, when people are learning mindsight, especially, she says, well, you don't want to, and this goes for all the gifts. She says, you don't want to ask your teachers to give you a gift or a special skill because you already have it. And she says, so asking them for something you already have is just pointless. She says, what you want to do is ask them to open your perception about your ability. And so that's another
Mm.
thing
What a
that
teacher. My goodness.
oh yeah, yeah. She's like, when
Oh
she
my goodness.
speaks, it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that.
Wow.
Yeah, at our last event, someone asked if there was any, it was just such a weird thing, but somebody asked if there was tricksters trying to get to the hill or people just trying to get there that didn't deserve it or something, or people pretending to go to the hill, something like that. Someone asked, and she goes, "Oh yeah, there are some." And then they said, "Well, what do you do about it?" And she goes, "Well, we love them too." And that was her answer.
Oh
And I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
my God. The
We all
hill,
were very, yeah.
the
So we were
hill is
all surprised by that.
where the telepathic children meet, right?
Yeah. So the hill is this.
Just to say, yeah.
Yeah. She calls the hill is what she calls the what does she used to call it? The ethereal realm. That's what she said, the ethereal place. So when she was a kid, or when she was much younger, every single night she would kind of pace in the dark. When we were going to sleep, she would just start pacing. And I always thought she was just trying to wind herself down or regulate herself. I had no idea what she was doing, but she did it everywhere. As soon as the sun's going down, and it's getting quiet, she start pacing. Once she started to communicate with me, she told me she was every night she had been going to this ethereal place, and she had mentors and teachers, and they'd been helping her whole life, helping her to keep it together before she could communicate. And so later on, the telepathy tapes, they coined it the hill. A lot of people started calling it that. And so now that's kind of what it's known as. And so this place, not only do they have spiritual teachers and guides and things like that, but anyone that eavesdrops, that's what she called, that's the word she uses. Anyone that's capable of a kind of, other people might say by locating or going out of body or just expanding themselves to get to that place. Anyone that's capable of it, they can go there. And there's not just one place, it's several different places. And so yeah, so she's her whole life she's had friends there, and which was really a big deal for me because me and a lot of the other parents of kids like her, we had this worry that or sadness that they don't have friends, and I was very sad about that, even though she seemed happy, like she never seemed lonely, but I just thought, how can she be so smiley all the time? She doesn't have friends, and it makes me so sad. And then she told me like her whole life she had friends, and it was just at a different place. And it was mind blowing, but it was also very relieving for me to hear that.
Ha- Have you gone to the hill?
I have, but I'm not really good at remembering it. So there,
Oh,
I have
wow.
glimpses every so often, and so often Lily will kind of fill in the blanks for me. Other people, usually when we have the classes and she's showing the telepathy, a lot of people will go and they'll remember. And a big part of why I don't remember is because as soon as I wake up, I go straight into mommy mode. I'm usually being woken up too by some kid and having to run. And so I tend to forget my dreams. Like, although this
Mm.
last couple of weeks I've been remembering really well. And and so yeah, she does a lot. She does a lot of dream work with me and other friends, and there's a lot of telepathy that happens. Like if in that period where I'm starting to wake up, she'll often be talking to me, and she'll be like, "Mom, like try to lay back down, try to go back to sleep." And she's speaking perfectly. When it's telepathy, it's almost like I could hear her voice. There's just so much to say about Livu. It's just so much that goes on in this crazy life that I have now.
And it sounds like, what can you say about the waking state and the I feel like, I can't confirm, but it's kind of one. Is it like one state? It seems
Hmm.
like there's all these separate states, but it's more our lack of capacity to function acutely when we're in the beta, every day. Like you said, you're interrupted from that higher level state. So, and that also seems to me why we can do certain things, those mind over matter things that you and I share interest of,
Hmm.
because it's like we're going into the dream state, but while we're awake. I would
Hmm.
almost, there's so many words for it, like hypnotism, or um, it's just a state of, what did you say before? It's not belief, it's uh, uh,
Expectation.
expectation. Well, I guess that's not really in line with what I'm talking about now. But a certain brainwave level, similar to when you're in that state, when you're having those, like when you said, I couldn't remember. Yeah, I do it, but I can't remember. What is this? Not remembering, not having all these abilities, but not aware of them. What is the key? What is the key to
Yeah,
do?
and I have this little bit of a concern, but I'm sure there's something to it. But Lilu has a hard time controlling her body, and because she's so out there, she barely feels her body senses. In fact, she thinks that's one of our superpowers, is that we actually can feel our senses really well, and we are kind of grounded in this reality, and so we have an amazing sense of time. Like we can actually tell when it's been 5 minutes in an hour. That's like nearly impossible for her. What's interesting though is she relies on me for time, but she also relies on her friends, her eavesdropping friends. And so if I ever say, Lethu doesn't have an alarm clock ever, but if I ever say, Lethu, we need to wake up at 7 o'clock tomorrow, her friends will wake her up exactly at 7. I don't know how it happens, but I could just change the time and it happens every single time. And it's so crazy how that works. But if I say, hey, Lethu, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and I'm like, and if, yeah, it's like, to her, 5 minutes, 5 hours is all the same thing. Like she cannot tell the difference. So she
Wow.
relies on me a lot for the stuff in this reality. But my thing is, the more telepathic I become, am I going to have a harder sense of time? Like, is it going to be harder for me to be able to do
Yes.
the things that I normally can do? And so I have that little bit of a concern, and I wonder if that holds me back. Because I do notice when I am out there a little bit more, I'm like, oh man, like this reality, it just kind of seems fake, you know? And so I wonder how to have that balance, like the balance of being able to navigate this world, but also really shine into my telepathy and my ability to connect with others that way.
Yeah, I'm so with you. I can remember sitting in meditation and going, the children need to be picked up right now, but
Hmm.
the body's not moving. And like you're talking about time in those states of mind, time's like it is yes, that really is it an issue? A lot of, like Muji Baba and the Ramana who sat in a cave for 40 years, with insects eating his body, because you go into these mind states and the body is not, uh, we don't have this idea about it that society tells us about it. We don't believe those ideas anymore. So
Yeah. So it makes you wonder how can you step more into the bigger you and be consciously aware of it in this reality? How do you hold both in a balanced way? And
especially when we're mothers, you know, if we weren't
yeah,
mothers, we could just just enjoy,
yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Needing to be that state of stable person for your kids, that place of, you know, yeah, I feel that a lot where I have to be kind of grounded for Lilu, especially. There's a part of me that has to be grounded in order to keep her grounded. You know, she relies on me a lot for that. But at the same time, she's constantly saying, all right, mom, now you got to do more telepathy. Now you got to. And so she's constantly getting me ready for more and more telepathy. And I'm seeing it. She tells me early enough where I can start integrating into it. But one of the first things she told me when I started going into the mind sight world is like she said, okay, mom, like this is going to lead to telepathy. And I was like, how is this going to lead to telepathy? I don't understand. But now I'm like, okay, okay, because the students I've had that gotten really good, you cannot tell it apart from telepathy. It's the same stuff now. And so, and it's only for those who've gotten to a certain level. But yeah, it's like, wow, this is telepathy. And so I get what Lita meant now.
Can I ask you what the levels look like? Does because it seemed when I was watching, say, Wendy and the other man,
Rob?
it's not, sorry, Rob. Yeah, I was watching a few of their videos and things, and it seems right at the beginning, it's not like you're seeing straight away, you know, it's a pen. At the beginning, it's a lot of intuition,
Hmm.
telepathy, it's a lot of this type of thing. But then it seems to get more acute to the point where, oh, you can actually clearly see that it's a pen. But then you're saying you get to that, and then it kind of not goes back, but it goes deeper into, well, it could be in any location, time and space don't aren't relevant. Is it,
Yeah.
how does it
And
look
so there's
gradually?
Well, there's different ways you can perceive without your eyes. So you can perceive, and so I kind of I'm in the process of making this into a science, and so I explain it a lot in scientific ways. But one of the ways we perceive is called hyperphantasia, and so that's when we're seeing with mental imagery. So that's more the intuitive way. Another way is called prophantasia, and that's when we're seeing right in front of us, regardless of where the item is. And so the person will be very shocked that the item's not right in front of them. Like it could be in another room, and they're still seeing it as if it's right in front of them. And then the other way is what you were describing. There's more than this, but the one you're describing, it's the light sense. And so that's our body's ability to see without the eyes. Like it's basically using other senses and sending those other senses to the visual cortex. And the visual cortex creates an image just like the same thing as your eyes do. And the reason we can do that is it's the fact that we've always been able to do that. It's just that people just don't understand that when we see, it's not the eyes only. It's actually the brain that's making us see. The brain connected with something else. um, and so the visual information we get is from many of our senses, not just the eyes. And so when we close the eyes, we're actually learning out of a need to depend on these other senses. So that one is what I call the light sense, and that's mimicking eyesight with your senses. So there's so many different ways, but once you connect all of them and you get your sensory system learning to perceive, because you can learn to perceive, you can touch something and teach your brain to see it. So that's one of the things I teach to get their hyperpantasia up. You can learn you can train yourself, I should say, not learn, but you can train yourself so that if you hear something, your brain shows it to you. Like and it's the same thing with smell and all of those things. And of course it's not limited to space and time. Like you can train yourself to learn something about its past or its future. So once you start integrating all of them, then it starts to become indistinguishable from telepathy, I think.
To me, that sounds like full consciousness capacity. Like,
Yeah, it's like the at first it was more like, oh, I can see through a blindfold. And but now it's like, oh my gosh, we have the capacity to like perceive like everything. And so the more I do this work, the more sacred that I see it is. And the more I recognize that we are these incredible divine beings and we just have forgotten how divine we are. Or it's almost like we're playing this game where we've forgotten. And the more it starts to turn on for me, the more I see this world as like a playground. I remember once seeing the world, like I had my blindfold on and seeing, I just remember seeing the world as like I remember thinking it was Pee-wee's Playhouse. And I remember thinking, man, this world is so fake. I just kept thinking this is so fake. And sometimes when you get kind of far with your perception, you start to question, like, why am I even playing by the rules of this world? We really can, even in our bodies, and a lot of people get surprised, and this is why mind over matter works. But in our material three-dimensional world, we still have access to these incredible things, and we can do it right now. We don't have to meditate beforehand, and we don't have to take 10 years to learn it. We actually have the ability right now to do a lot of stuff. It's just not nobody, but a lot of people don't realize they can. And so it's like what I've said before about my dad. When I was a kid, he said something really philosophical without meaning to, and I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I was watching The Wizard of Oz, and I remember, I was at the part where the cowardly lion was in the jungle and in the forest, and he was just so scared. And I remember my dad said, he's really, really strong. He just doesn't know it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like in kid language, I was thinking, he's a lion. And I thought if anything should be scared, it should be everything should be scared of him, And then it hit me and I said, oh my gosh, that means like that's probably how it is in real life. We probably will have an experience. And of course, I'm thinking in kid words. I don't remember how I thought it back then, but the idea was, wow, we can have an experience that's not true because of the way we think. And I remember
Yeah.
that stood with me my whole life. And so one of the things that people don't realize is that we are these magical beings in a magical world, but we've been taught that magic doesn't exist. We've been taught that it's crazy to think that magic exists, but that's really what we are and what we are capable of. Like we are capable, we don't, and some people will accept, they'll think, okay, if I go into an altered state, then I can talk to my guides and angels and then I can have these incredible experiences. I'm like, no, you don't have to go into an altered state. You have access right now in your normal state. And you can do it instantly. You don't have to meditate. You can do all of it. All you have to do is expect it and know it. And you can. And sometimes I get frustrated with myself when I don't do something immediately. And I thought, wow, what do I need to do to get around my mind to know that I can do this, to expect it. And so sometimes if I'm doing something for the first time, like some kind of mind over matter, it takes me a while because I haven't seen someone else do it. It'll take me a while. And then once I do it and I show someone, they usually could pick it up within minutes because they've seen me do it. And so yeah, we are these really fascinating creatures. And so whenever I see people, I think of I just see these divine beings, some of them not realizing how divine they are and still kind of playing the game. But me knowing it. And it's like when a person comes to me to learn mindsight, for example, they'll say, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I know other people do, but will I be able to do it? I'm like, of course you will. Like to me, and I said, you know how your child, if you had a child, and you know how they started walking or they started reading, and they say, will I ever learn to read? I'm like, you're going to be like, of course you are. I mean, like, there's no doubt in your mind. That's how I am when someone comes to me for mindset. I'm like, of course you're going to see. And it doesn't matter what their background is. They could be, doesn't matter their background, their age, doesn't matter how blind they are. They can have no eyes. They could be born without eyes. They could be born blind. They could be someone that just lost their vision. They could be someone that's colorblind. None of it matters. They can all do it like really fast too. And
Oh,
I don't even give them any room to doubt. As soon as I always say what I really teach is mindset shifts. It's not really the ability. And so like, for example, I had one woman, she had no eyes and she was born blind. And she goes, well, it's going to be harder for me because, and I say, no, it's not. It's going to be easier because of this. I immediately switch it and tell her something else. It's going to be easier for you because because you have no eyes, you're not going to doubt it. You're not going to doubt when you start seeing. But I'll have somebody that does have eyes. Who's also blind. He'll say, "Oh, it's going to be harder for me because I'm not going to be sure." And I was like, "No, no, no, it's going to be easier for you because you have eyes." So I'll always tell them why it's going to be easier, even though it doesn't matter. Like it's just a story I'm coming up with that makes sense to them. And so I always call that the make sense theory. As long as it makes sense, they'll allow it to happen. So,
Wow,
so
very
yeah, that's it's a fun playing with reality that way.
wow. We haven't spoken about the other stuff yet. We were chatting about you're so refreshing, Dahlia, because I come from, where it takes you so long, you've got to, you know, get into a good state and you know me, you know where I come from. When you're like, forget all that. And I love that. I really love that. And I agree with you. Like I've had that experience myself. I'm like, hang on, I one moment I practice Qigong for all of this time and I'm in this fantastic state and it works. And then another time I've just been having a laugh on the phone with a friend and it works even quicker. Or another time you can't explain it at all.
Yeah.
There's we think there's a rule, and as soon as we think there's a rule and we're like, oh, it works with this, and we look, ah, that's what the rule is. And then we blow the rule away and there's no
Hmm.
rule and we're still looking for rules. And but definitely
Yeah.
what you said about the natural way how a child learns to talk is they just imitate and they expect that they can talk and it's going to happen. It's our natural
Yeah. And
process.
they don't have to be explained why they need to learn it. So that's something that we learn from school. Like a lot of us, like, oh, here's math and this is why you got to learn it. This is how it's going to impact your life. But as a kid, when we see something amazing, we don't need to be told. We're just drawn to it. We just know we want to learn it because it's fun. Like if we see somebody skateboarding, we're gonna be like, oh, I want to learn that. Why? Because it's fun. I'm drawn to it. I don't need to be explained the benefit, even though I can come up with a million benefits. But it's like, and so sometimes when people see these mind over matter things, they'll be excited and they'll be drawn, but then sometimes they'll hold back and they'll say, "Well, what's the practical application?" And I'm like, "What do you need a
Oh,
practical application for?" And I was like, "I can give you 100 of them, but what are you even asking that question for?" And I was like, why do you have to give yourself a reason to learn something when you're being totally drawn to it?" And so just
yeah.
listen to that. Listen
The
to your body being
conditioning.
drawn to it. Yeah, exactly. Have to give themselves permission.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, what you were saying about, getting into that state and practice like that, there is a benefit to that. And the benefit is that it's something, a belief again. And so, or an expectation. So you can have an expectation that says, when I do this,
Mm,
it's going to make it work better. And
yeah.
you're amplifying it every single time. So that does make it so it works better for you. Like, so
Mm,
I actually do like, I do like Qigong and I do love energy forms because it does, it's something, it's like a belief I can constantly, or an expectation I can constantly make stronger over and over again.
mm.
So there's some people, they do some energy work beforehand and they're just a little bit better at doing things, mind over matter. And I think it's because they believe so strongly in the training they've done. They believe so strongly that it makes it much easier for them versus someone that, so there's just different benefits to it all.
I want to share this funny situation for me that's to do with you. So, for the people watching, I train the abilities. I practice certain experiments, mind over matter, as you do, we both do. And I was sharing with Dahlia a personal little experiment that I was trying to achieve, which
Hmm.
was putting one object through another object, because Grandmaster Dr. Pang of Jineng Qigong that I follow did this. One of my teachers was his direct student, and she used to talk about it, and it got into my field. And like you're talking, I was drawn to it. Just drawn to it. I'm like, yeah, I so feel that this is completely possible. I can do it. And so I started a practice with another Jineng teacher of wanting to put an object through another object. For example, you have a cup and matchstick, and you want to put the matchstick straight through the cup. It seems against physics, but that's what Qigong masters and like you're saying, people that aren't even going into state and Qigong masters. And that was a little practice, and I didn't actually achieve it, and I got bored with it because I didn't have success. And I was telling Dalia about it, and together we were playing around with it a bit, and both had that feeling like it's there, it's so doable, it's so achievable, but it didn't quite happen with us when we had a play. And then you called me or you messaged me about the most that I just got so excited because you were talking about, you see someone do it and it brings you closer. Oh, they did it. I can do it too. In your training session of Mindsight, and then you do the experiments to just show how everything's possible and the energy with that. What happened? What happened with the object through the object?
Yeah, so I have to say, a lot of me doing the mind over matter stuff, you were a huge inspiration for all of it, like huge
Oh,
inspiration.
thank
And
you.
so that one, putting the item, I remembered people like John Chang and stuff putting the chopsticks through the table when and then I
Yeah.
remember thinking, okay, there's several like examples of this happening, so I know it's physically possible, but it might be hard to wrap my mind around of being a matchstick and glass. And so I thought, okay, students, let's actually start with a needle and let's start with like a plastic cup. And so I said, but just kind of do it until if you're not going to put force, just let it go in like it's butter. And so a lot of people did that easily. Then they moved to like the lid of a bottle or something. Then they would move to that, and again it would happen. And then Sean, the blind
Really?
guy, he usually is the one that kind of does everything. Sean takes the needle and it goes through a solid table. Like it just goes through, and we couldn't even get it out. And as soon as we all went over there, mind blown, and as soon as he did it, everybody was able to get the needle through the table. And
Oh
what was really
God.
crazy and what blew my mind was there was an instance where, it would get stuck in the table where you couldn't get it out. It would just stuck. So this one guy, this blew my mind. I had to integrate after this. This one guy takes these flyers to take it out. And when he did, two needles came out. And there
What?
was several instances of duplication happening during that week. And so afterwards I had to integrate like crazy because I was like, oh my gosh, like that was a glitch. This is all fake, like it was, but yeah, seeing them put the through the table, that was yeah, anyway, that was a huge
So
moment.
two needles. So he got the pliers. He put the pliers on the needle. He pulled the needle
One
out.
needle,
Yeah.
yeah, and then two needles came out.
When he
Which
opened the
is
pliers, two needles were there.
yeah. And then this actually happened a couple of like there was a lot of instances of duplication. There was another man
Duplication. I
there.
haven't heard of this. I've never
Yeah, well,
heard of
that's
this.
just kind of what we're coming up with the term. There was a lot of other things happening too, like apportation. But this was
What?
duplication. Like,
Tell me. Tell me. Tell me this
yeah,
stuff.
so this one guy, he actually we were playing with putting how do you say it? We were playing with putting items in water and using telekinesis to kind of move the water. So he he drops a needle. How did this happen? He drops a needle in the water and he wanted to take another needle and pick it up, like magnetize it. He wanted to
Yeah.
pick it up from the water. And when he
Yeah.
picked it up again, two needles came out. There was only one needle in the water, and he puts the other needle in there. He picks it up, and then two needles came out. Besides the one he was holding. And so that was another example of the duplication. Another, what was interesting about this whole phenomenon is the whole like beforehand, one of the students picked me up at the airport. Like we were there at the same time and we decided to carpool. And as we were driving, we kept talking about the Mandela effect. And I remember thinking, I've always heard that it's fascinating, but I'm one of those that thinks maybe we're just misremembering, that's what I'm thinking. And but when we were that week, I saw so many instances of duplication and apportation, There was this one instance where a woman, she had a headache the day before, and so she came prepared. She brought a pill, and we all saw, like me and someone else, we saw her take the pill, and then a second later, there's a pill on the table, and it's like she only brought one, but it was as if she never took it. It was like it was still in its package and everything. And so I said, "Oh my gosh, this," and she said it was another case of duplication because we saw her. And I said, "My
Wow.
goodness, this is like the Mandela effect right in front of my face." I said, "We saw her take it just like 2 minutes ago, and but all the evidence shows that she didn't take it." And and it's like we stepped into a different timeline or something where she didn't take it, but she remembers taking it. And so it's just so I started to question, or I started to should shift my view on the Mandela effect a bit because of that experience. There's just so much.
If I hadn't, you've heard of Cynthia Sue Larson, Dr. Cynthia
Mm-mm.
Sue Larson. Oh, really? Wow. Because, gosh, had I not have heard her talk and read her books and done her programs and things, if I wasn't associated with her, I would have a bit of trouble believing what you were saying. I'd be like, come on, Dahlia, like surely there was another
Hmm.
someone else's medicine or something. But because I've been exposed to this for many, many years now, I can receive what you're saying. But I feel like people watching will probably be like, oh, but guys, like this things, yeah. Once we get into this world and this realm and we start practicing intention of wanting to experience and training ourselves to experience, we start seeing all these things in reality that we would
Hmm.
not believe. Um, Cynthia Sue Larson is a quantum physicist. She's a scientist. She's a mature woman that, she's not a what do you call like an influencer? She's not a social media person. She's a professional scientist. And
Hmm.
I think she coined the term Mandela effect, quite possibly. She's been
Hmm.
doing it for decades as she put together the conferences and everything. And yeah, what you're saying, like it's would be difficult for people to really believe what we're saying here.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah. Like, I remember hearing this story that certain backgrounds, and I'm going to butcher the story, but that certain backgrounds purposely remember things orally or only shared it orally because they knew certain backgrounds.
Are you talking about
They
culture?
knew it, certain cultures, like certain religious backgrounds. So I can't remember the exact ones, but I like old, like Christianity, old Islam, and then also even like old, I want to say Buddhism, but there was these backgrounds where they only did it orally. And so like I heard that some of them only did it orally because they knew that if they wrote it down, it could be changed. And so there was this belief that certain entities could
Well,
change the reality around us, and but they can't change what we remember in our mind. and and so
wow. You think it'd be the opposite, right? If you
yeah, and
write it
so
down, it can't be changed. But if you say it orally, then it can be changed.
yeah, so yeah, that's what we think today, but that's kind of how they went about it. And so there's even a lot of like different texts and biblical texts where if you look at it, there's a lot of Mandela effect going on where people remember things totally different than what's written. Lion and the Lamb, for example, that's just one example, but there's a lot of different examples of even like biblical texts or even just ancient texts where we remember it differently than what it is. And so anyway, I forgot what they called them, like different gin or something that used to kind of change texts and stuff. And so you had to remember it and speak it orally. You had to, your job was to actually remember. So
Yeah.
yeah, like all of that just kind of leads to this reality being changeable, like not just
Wow.
our future, but maybe even our past could be changeable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they even have therapies where they guide a person into a hypnotic state and bring them back into that moment in time. And and change the relationship. Something might have been violent, but let's do it in a passive way and then come back. And then people report of all kinds of strange things actually shifting with, you know, rippling out because we're all not so as separate as we think we are.
Yeah. When I look at some of my old journal entries, and because I've had a lot of mental shifts over the years, and when I look at them, I don't even recognize like it's almost like I don't remember it happening because it's so different than how I believe now. It doesn't make sense. I remember it differently because it's just so different than how I remember. So,
Yeah.
in fact, when I teach, when I'm teaching mindsight or other things, I have them really focus on the beginning and document it and focus like this is how you started. Because once they start seeing it, it's easy. They're going to forget how they started, and they're going to come up with all kinds of conclusions that are inaccurate, like thinking they're cheating or something, because it's just so easy for them. But they'll forget that it was a strong, difficult process to get there, unless they open instantly. But most people, they usually need like a little bit of a process if they're an adult, just for mental reason, just mindset. That's all. Like some adults can open instantly because they know they can and they've seen it enough, but a lot of adults will believe in the process more. And so that's what I offer them, a process that they can believe in, and then they'll allow themselves to open. But even when they do open, so many will forget how they started, and I have to show them a video, or I have to show them their notes, like, look, this is where you started. And so a lot in the training that I do, I have to show them a beginning and have them really focus on it, because once they go into the new reality, they're going to forget that the old reality even existed. It's the weirdest thing to witness.
Yeah, it reminds me of what we were talking about before, how when you achieve something in the mind over matter experiments, magnetizing something, holding something on the wall with your energy, putting an object through an object, if we don't take a photo or record a video of it, we deny we even achieved it, you
Hmm.
know, at times. The
Yeah.
mind, it wants to protect the old reality or something.
Yes. Yeah, it's like there's in modern day, we like to say there's a left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, and we say that the left hemisphere is about our current reality, and it's the structured reality that we can feel safe in. Basically, it explains everything. We kind of understand what to expect. And then the right hemisphere is just seeing everything without a filter. And so you're just experiencing everything way more than you normally can. And so once we experience something for the first time, which a lot of people in these trainings will do, they'll experience something for the first time. The first thing the left hemisphere wants to do is try to explain it using something in logic that it already has, but that logic won't actually work, with the new reality. And so immediately they might jump to like, oh, this mask must be flawed because that's within the current logic, or this must be what's happening. Um, Often another thing that happens is usually what I do with a person is I'll have them blindfolded, and then I'll have them start seeing. I'll let them think they're peeking. They're really not, but I let them think they're peeking from like here or something. And then I'm like, just go ahead and practice. Just go ahead and practice. Your brain's gonna, do this. Your brain's gonna do that. As they're telling me the colors and stuff, I'm actually progressing them. I'm actually doing this series of stuff that's making their sensory system stronger. So I'm going farther away, and I'm going in places that their eyes actually can't pick up. And I'm doing that on purpose. The whole time they're thinking they're cheating, I'm letting them. And then finally, when I'm at a place where I've progressed them enough, where I'm like 10 feet behind them or something, I'll say, go ahead and take off your blindfold. And then they'll have the ontological shock. They'll be like, where's the color? It just disappeared. What's going on? You know? And then I'll tell them I was back there the whole time. And so one of the first things they'll think is that I'm exaggerating. Like, no, you weren't, you were here. And then I'll be like, okay, watch the video. As soon as they see the video, they'll be like, oh my gosh. And then so they're like, and then what happens is this becomes the new reality. So there's this shift that happens in their mind, and it starts to go more into the left hemisphere, where now they can expect that to happen. Now this is something that happens. This is part of my reality now, that I can see things that are way behind me. That's just my new reality.
Can
But
they
sometimes there
stretch
is a shock. There is a shock at first, and so I usually say, for example, like because we have a foundational belief that that's not possible, and people have to kind of face that belief. And so one of the things I tell people, I say, is if you believe all crows are black, you have a belief that all crows are black. How many times you actually need to see a white crow for that belief to be broken? And so it, when they see one white crow, it's already cracking. It's already cracking. They'll come up with an excuse. They'll say, "Oh, that's an exception. That's because of this," you know. But then if you keep seeing more and more different color crows, eventually you'll have too much evidence that says that all crows aren't black. That was a false idea. And so you'll have a new belief now that says crows come in different colors, you know. And that's what happens with the mindset. At first, you'll come up with an excuse. You'll think, okay, my mask is flawed, or I'm actually peeking, or something like that's happening. But you'll just get so much more evidence as we're doing it. And I let them believe it because you can't they'll just think you're lying, or they'll think you're crazy. You know, they'll think, so you just let them believe it, but you just keep offering them more and more evidence until it's okay. There's no other way to explain it. There's no, I was working with a blind man once, and he was born blind, and his dream was to be able to read like print, because he was told his whole life he would never read print. And so I remember him saying, I believe one day I might be able to read print. And in my head, I'm like, this guy's gonna be reading print tomorrow. And that was my head. And so the next day he's reading print. I have videos of it. He's
Wow.
reading. And I said, look, now you're doing it just like me. You're reading just like me. And he says, no, it's not. He's like, it's not like you. And then I said, well, why not? You're not using your other senses. You're not using touch. You're not using sound. You're not blah, blah, blah. You're doing it from a visual place. And he's like, huh, I guess there's no, wait a minute. No, I guess there's no two ways around it. I guess that is reading. So, but he kept trying to find reasons why it wasn't reading like a print. It wasn't reading in a visual way, how it was different to me. And I said, it's not different. I had another
Wow.
person who has no eyes, a woman, and she said the same. She's like, well, you know, she had never seen in her entire life, and she was reading. And so she says, well, Dahlia, I still think I'm just using my other senses. And I said, okay, well, or no, she didn't say it like that. She says, I still think I'm using a sense. And I said, well, yeah, reading or sight is a sense. So yes, you are using a sense. And she's like, huh. You know? And it's just so interesting how people try to
Wow.
deny that they're doing something incredible because it
Yeah.
starts to feel ordinary, especially when it starts to feel ordinary.
Can I ask you, when your clients are working with you and they gain the ability to the point where you've shown them you can't make up doubts, like you really are doing this, when they go away from you, when they go back, if they've come to a seminar, they've flown in or something, and when they go home, they still have the ability?
Yeah, if a person starts to doubt the ability, this happens not all the time, but it happens where someone will doubt it and they're like, "Oh, I just thought I was cheating, and then I lost it, and then I couldn't make it happen again." And it's just so interesting where if they doubted, they lost perception. And so one of the things I say is that perception increases and expands when we're in that state of awe. Like, because that's when we go more into the right hemisphere and our filters are shut down. And so if we're going like this and we're in that all state, we're actually picking up so much. And if you go into that state where you're kind of like doubting and you're feeling frustrated, your perception naturally closes down. And then on top of that, if you actually believe and expect that you're doing it in some other way, yeah, it'll just close down. And so people will come back because they said, hey, like I doubted, I thought I was cheating. Then I couldn't even replicate it anymore. So that made it very obvious I wasn't cheating. So please help me get it back. So that happens sometimes.
And they can pick it back up again?
Yeah, usually it's just about their mindset. But but with most people, if they get established enough, because the way I explain it is it's a sensory system. We develop it out of need. And it's like you don't even have to think about it. It's just a sensory system that you've developed. And so every time you cover your eyes, you're going to be able to see. Because your eyes will know when you do like an all state or you do certain anchor, you're going to see. Every time I do this anchor, I see. And so once it's established really well, you don't even have to practice anymore. Like me, I never practice. The only time I ever put on a blindfold is when I'm showing people the ability if I'm demoing, or if I'm trying to get people to model. And even then I try to avoid it. I try to have them see students instead so they don't think it's just me that does it. And so yeah, like you don't have to practice it if it's well established and you know it's a real thing. Like one thing
What
I
would
say
you,
is, what was that?
sorry, I was just going to ask, what would you do? Because you're talking before about going even deeper. You're talking like a progressive, a gradual, there's this kind of level, this level, this level. And then at the beginning of our conversation, you're talking about the level where, you know, what I was talking about? If somebody has the mindset, they've experienced the mindset and they can do it, is there something that you would recommend that someone trains, practices to go to a deeper level?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that the goal is to see through a blindfold and in the way with the light sense, like a visual way. To me, that is a lot of people will be surprised, but to me, that's the easiest thing you can teach someone. And I can get a person to do that in 2 minutes. Like it's so maybe 10 minutes. But I don't because their mindset will just say, I don't believe this is really happening and shut it down. And so I usually start them with more of the intuitive process. And the intuitive process, people trying to think, they tend to think that's just a stepping stone to seeing with the light, seeing in a visual like way. To me, no, that is actually that's the part that you can go deep with. That's the part where you start seeing into other rooms, like that intuitive part, getting that really strong and connecting all the senses. So a lot of people will ignore that part once they start seeing through the blindfold, thinking that's what they were trying to achieve. And I'm like, no, no, no. The other thing, you want to do the impressive stuff where you're seeing in another room and you're seeing through things. That's the stuff you want to focus on, not the
Yep.
foundational stuff. Um, and so a lot of people just, yeah, there's people who just want to experiment and explore and they experience it and they're done. They just want to know it was a real thing. But those who want to go deeper, I would suggest focusing on the intuitive stuff. So learning to perceive by your sense of touch and sense of hearing and sense of smell and energy sense, all of that is where you can get really far. That's the
Yeah,
funnest for me.
that excites me too. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
like
doing in these amazing seminars that you,
yeah. So usually I have years worth of material. And so what I usually do is I offer people a couple of senses, but what I'm really showing them is the protocol. Like, look, this is the protocol. Now you can go home and practice it and you can get really, really good. And so that's kind of what I offer in the seminar. And then of course, we develop the light sense and stuff so that people can be excited. They usually get so excited with the light sense. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing. In reality, the light sense is doing a couple of things. We're training our body's sensory system to utilize other senses and send the image to the visual cortex and show it to us. And we're telling our body, okay, with our eyes covered, or our minds, when our eyes are covered, we need you to pick up the light photosensors in our body and all of these sensors. We need you to pick all of that up and send that information to the visual cortex and show us an image still. And in reality, like we're doing that all the time. But that's one thing we're doing. The other thing we're doing is we are using a transparency vision, which is something we do every day, and people don't realize it. So if I ask you to look down on the floor and to focus on the floor, you're actually looking right through your nose. Your brain fills in the information, your nose totally disappears. And even if you place something in front of your nose,
yeah,
that disappears.
totally,
Like,
that's so true.
yeah. And so that actually is totally obscure. It's totally obstructing your field of vision, but your mind just says, okay, we're going to see right through it.
Yeah,
And it's learned to do it with the nose because, it's right in front of your face, blocking everything. And so what we're doing is we're teaching you whenever we cover your eyes with anything, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to just see through it. And so that's basically, again, you're creating a need and your mind just kind of learns, okay, now I know every time she covers her eyes, I need to start seeing through this thing. So you get to a point, it is instant, kind of like with the nose. We don't think about it. And it's the same thing with a blindfold. If I put on any blindfold or I cover my eyes at all, I will always see through it. Because and I don't have to be in a perfect state. State does help. Like if I am very annoyed or something, or someone's being very like trying to debunk or something, it will make it harder to see. Like that's true. It will be harder. There's times where I put in a lot of layers, and if I'm in a very stressful environment, it'll be kind of hard to see through the layers. And I've struggled a little bit. So you'll see me kind of going like this, like trying to create more of an anchor. But if I'm just with you and I'm comfortable, you can put anything on. I don't even have to do anything. I could it's just like when I look through my nose, except you're learning to do it with anything that covers your eyes. And so there's just a few different things that's going on. So it's a multiple,
Multitude.
all these multiple layers to it and sensory systems that are kind of working for you to perceive without your eyes. When I'm
Mm,
working with blind people, it is a combination of all the different things I've mentioned. There's also other things. There's also edge detection. We actually do have the ability to see in the dark really, really well, not just in our eyes. A lot of people think that we have the cones and things only in our eyes, but people without eyes can do it too. So we're also really, really well equipped with just a sensory system in our body
wow.
um, to see in total darkness. So that I also kind of teach that. Like transparency vision. Ben Carson's very famous for that. He's a famous neurosurgeon, and so he's very famous for being able to do very advanced surgeries because he can actually see through bone. And so he doesn't have to move the things out of the way or do anything. He can do these advanced dangerous surgeries better because he could see through things. And so I've had neurosurgeons reach out to me saying, hey, they wanted to learn so that they can do better surgeries too. So
Wow.
what's really nice is last year I was at Contact in the Desert, and that's kind of the first time I went public, and I showed the ability. I was asked to go there, and I was asked to demonstrate, and there was a big shock. The people were kind of shocked and excited, but they were shocked. Um, and that shock stayed with them. But this year, when I went, they had absorbed it for a while, and I also went with two blind students, and one of them with no eyes, and the other one with eyes. And so people saw these blind students, they told their story, and you could see the difference in the audience this time. It wasn't just like, what the heck is going on? Shock. I don't even believe half the stuff I'm seeing. But this time it was, oh my gosh, this is actually impactful. Like, this is actually helpful to learn. I actually had a couple people who went up to me because Carolyn Corey, she has a movie called Superhuman Rebirth that's coming out. And so my students and I are in that movie, and she showed part of the movie, the part with the blind students and me. And so people watched it because they took them through scientific trials and stuff. And people watched it, and there was a couple of people that came up to me afterwards and apologized and said, I am so sorry. Because this one guy specifically, he kind of grilled me, and he kept saying, you have to have an implant. You're doing this with an implant. And I was like, an implant? What do you think? And I thought it was so, I thought it was
To
so
bother.
crazy, but it was so absurd that it made me laugh. And like, I
Yeah.
didn't get offended at all. But he kept saying, well, look, if you have an implant, you could just tell us. I mean, I'm like, what kind of an implant are you talking about? Talking about an alien implant? And then he's all like, well, whatever, you have some kind of an implant. And I remember him saying that. And then this year he saw that movie, and he came up, he's like, I got to apologize. Like, this work you're doing is incredible. And
Oh,
he's
that's
like, now I
amazing.
see what you were talking about, what you were doing. And he wasn't the only one. There was a couple people who said, wow, like this is so impactful. And so,
Mm,
so yeah, I'm happy that it's being taken more now that it's out there. It's being
yeah.
taken more, I don't want to say seriously. It's just people are starting to understand
Yeah,
the
they're
implications
open.
now.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I really feel for people that on my channel too, I have some comments, people just don't believe these things,
Hmm.
mind over matter things. And I just feel really like, compassionate for them because can you imagine living in a world where you just think, nah, these things aren't possible. We're just these bodies, we're all these separate bodies, materialism is the ultimate. Ah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's funny, and a lot of those people will say, well, science says this. And I'm saying, that's not how science is. That's not how science actually
Science
works.
comes after.
Science, yeah, so science is seeing a phenomenon and studying it and seeing if it's repeatable and trying to learn, like, oh, that's interesting, let's study it. That's science. What people are saying is, okay, so someone didn't study something, so it's not real. It's like, or basically a lot of people, when they say, oh, the science doesn't say that, they're kind of going with the dogma versus this field is I'm working very hard to oh, am I
Right.
frozen?
Yeah, you're right now. Oh, we got some.
The main thing I wanted to get out there is that this stuff is gaining traction. It's going to become common knowledge. The reason why I'm doing so much work with experimenting and researchers and all that, it's not to prove that it's real. It's more for us to discover how this stuff works. And I mean, when we discover it, we make it normal. And I love mystifying things. I love it, but people tend to create a gap between them and anything that they consider mystical. And so by creating this science out of all of this, people are going to start to see it as normal. And that's what I want. I want people to recognize, hey, this is stuff we can do, and it is normal. It is within our new science, or I don't want to call it new science, but it is science. It is repeatable. It is something we've been able to discover. It's something that we can all do, and it's exciting because can we can communicate telepathically, and we can see in other places without our eyes, and we are able to do things with just our intention and will, things that we normally thought were impossible before. So all of that is just so exciting to get out there.
No, thank you so much. Or you're frozen, you're back. So good to have you share all of this, and I resonate 100% with you, as you know. You know, I totally agree. My saying is paranormal, it's normal. It just needs to be, everyone's got to do it for us to get rid of that para part. Yeah, thanks so much,
Yeah,
Dalia.
and I really appreciate I really appreciate how like I said, you were a big inspiration for me, and how I was going to help people to see their to see that side of themselves. I don't know. I just remember meeting you. I'm like, this person gets it. She gets it. And then like I was so inspired. And so I did create this huge mind over matter part of my training based on just knowing you and how yeah. So anyway, you were a big inspiration for me. So I do
Oh, thank
appreciate that.
you. Well, you took my stuff to beyond my levels. So then you were inspiring me. It's been wonderful. And yeah, I just was so excited every time you'd tell me some progress in your trainings, and it was blowing my mind. What did you say before?
Mhm.
You had to assimilate? You had to keep it. I had to keep assimilating after talking to you.
Mhm.
Wonderful. I wish you all the best with everything you're doing, with the wonderful work that you do, and we keep in touch and bouncing off each other. May do something like this again. I'd love to be involved with you. I want to come along and learn from you. I can't see yet. I can't see yet. So
Yeah,
yeah,
would definitely love that. And I would love for you to share any other mind over matter with any of my classes in the future. And also, yeah, like I would love to collaborate.
awesome. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.